Good evening. I'm Armando Goya, President of the Weslaco ISD Board of Trustees. This special board meeting is being conducted in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. The board is meeting by the use of Google Meets and telephone transmission, which allows two-way communication for members of the public during public comments. A recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. The time now is 5:41, and I'm calling this meeting to order. I'll now begin the roll call, calling each board member by name. Signify you're present by saying I are present when I call your name. Mr. Nieto.
Present.
Mrs. Susaita.
Present.
Costeño.
Present.
Dr. Rodriguez.
Present.
Mr. Los Santos.
Present.
And Mr. Andrew Gonzalez. Let the record show that a quorum of board members are in attendance. Item 3, public comments.
We have two. The first one is Ms. Julie Valdez.
Okay, Ms. Valdez? I will go through the procedures here. First of all, identify yourself and give your address.
My name is Julie Ann Valdez, and my address is 1103 Stone Street, Weslaco, Texas.
Okay. Pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, the Board of Trustees may not deliberate on any comment made by a member of the public on a subject that is not included on the agenda posted with notice of the meeting. As per the Texas Attorney General, the scope of board discussion for a subject not part of the meeting agenda is limited to only a proposal by a board member to place the subject on a future board agenda. Specific factual information or recitation of existing policy may be furnished in response to inquiries, but the board shall not deliberate or decide regarding any subject that is not included on the agenda posted with notice of the meeting. Audience participation at a board meeting is limited to the portion of the meeting designated for that purpose. At all other times during a board meeting, the audience shall not enter into discussion or debate on matters being considered by the board, unless recognized by the presiding officer. No public comment presentation shall exceed 5 minutes. Any disruptive behavior by any speaker may result in the speaker's removal from participation in this meeting. Please be mindful of using names or personal identifiable information, as there is no immunity from defamatory comments while participating in public comments. You now have the floor, Ms. Valdez.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for the countless of hours that I know you guys spend dedicating your time to the community. It is a lot, and I just want to say thank you for that. Next, I'm kind of disappointed because I did sign up for public comments earlier, and they told me that I could not discuss, or I was called back and told I could not discuss the item that I wanted to actually public comment on. And that was disheartening because, I took it as a form of censorship. But I don't want to start negatively, so I'll go into what I can comment on, and that is the number 4. So I know you guys are going to discuss the compensation plan, and I had already briefly looked at it and compared last year's compensation plan with this year's compensation plan. And I looked at it again because that was like a while back ago. And I did want to bring up some issues that I noticed that some people had communicated to me. And that was in terms of, I'm not sure if I got these terms correctly. I took like a crash course on, the terminology, reclassification. So from what people told me, and from what I read on the compensation plan, it's the reclassification. Some of the duties were reclassified and the pay grade changed. And when that changed, this actually capped some employees' salaries. And when this capped the employee salaries, their duties or something, it was based on their duties. And from my understanding, now there's like a discrepancy. There's like a dissonance between different people that have different classifications and their classification. And this is causing problems because people who are coming in are getting paid more than employees that have been working here for years. And the thing about the people working here for years is that they're expected to train these new employees. And they're training new employees that are earning more money than them. and how, I'm not sure how these job duties or how HR or how whomever went about reclassifying these things, but that doesn't sound, it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound correct. Like, how is it that your duties changed to include training somebody else that is now getting paid more than you? Not only that, there's people with credentials, when the restructuring occurred, people with credentials that are now also underneath other people with, not with lesser, I don't want to put the credentials in a hierarchy, but there's they're having to answer to people that seem to be not know what's going on. It's the same issue. How are you training people that are getting paid more than you and have a higher pay grade or a higher classification? I'm not sure if I got the terminology correct, but okay, next. There is also the question of assignments and duties and the commensuration of those assignments and duties to pay grade. There's people getting paid 6 figures that don't have many duties. And I understand that they have they're in this maybe this place where they're kind of in transition, but how is it that that's occurring? That should have gotten settled long ago. There shouldn't be people getting paid that much money, 6 figures, and they have their duties are not clarified, not specified. I just want to communicate these concerns about the compensation plan. Also, for people out there that are listening, you can appeal your reclassification compared to for your duties. I forgot what the word is, but it's in the compensation plan. So for the people that are listening, you can appeal your reclassification if you are reclassified and now you're getting paid less, or you believe that you perceive that you're not getting paid what you should be getting paid. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Valdez. Next. Council, do we redo this again, or
Yeah.
just to do it right?
Let's do it.
Okay, identify yourself and give your address.
My name's Matt Wilson, and I live at 3000 Lark Avenue in McAllen.
Okay, man,
Can y'all hear me all right?
you got it. Okay. Pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, the Board of Trustees may not deliberate on any comment made by a member of the public on a subject that is not included on the agenda posted with notice of this meeting. As per the Texas Attorney General, the scope of board discussion for a subject not part of the meeting agenda is limited to only a proposal by a board member to place on the subject on a future board agenda. Specific factual information or recitation of existing policy may be furnished in response to inquiries, but the board shall not deliberate or decide regarding any subject that is not included on the agenda posted with notice of the meeting. Audience participation of a board meeting is limited to the portion of the meeting designated for that purpose. At all other times during a board meeting, the audience shall not enter into discussion or debate on matters being considered by the board, unless recognized by the presiding officer. No public comment presentation shall exceed 5 minutes. Any disruptive behavior by any speaker may result in the speaker's removal from participation in the meeting. Please be mindful of using names or personally identifiable information, as there is no immunity from defamatory comments while participating in public comments. Mr. Wilson, you have the floor.
Perfect. Folks, it's good to see y'all in person. I think I've spoken to all of y'all, maybe not Dr. Rodriguez, but we'll get there one day. I know quite a bit about y'all. I think y'all know something about me. I'm a Valley native. I'm not a product of this district. I went to the Science Academy over in Mercedes. I do think that coffee from the Weslaco Starbucks is the reason I graduated from that school. Went to A&M. I've been in journalism 7 years, 3 years in my current position. I cover every school district and college in Hidalgo County and sometimes Starr County, but I don't always make it out that far. I'm here because at a meeting earlier this month, someone called into question my professional integrity, my journalistic integrity, and I found that really concerning. Like I said, I cover a lot of school districts, probably upwards of 20 about 150 board trustees. I've never had my integrity questioned privately, certainly not in a public forum, and I thought it was worth coming down and, just saying I am a person of integrity, and I want y'all to know that and how to work with me. The school district has faced some challenges. I joked with a trustee from another district a while back that I have a bitter pen and it can sting sometimes, and I do. I write incisively, I write critically and to the point. I also like to be fair, and I like to have balance and kind of tell everybody's side of the story. So I'm not, with my coverage, I'm not here to tear down this district. I'm not here to make y'all look like you don't know what you're doing. I'm here, Trustee Susaita said something earlier this month. She said that, I believe it was, what makes us uncomfortable helps us grow. And I think that's my role here. I'm here to tell people about the tough decisions y'all are making. I've had a difficult relationship with this district's administration. Mr. Coronado, we've had a pretty good relationship so far. I like to think that we're building a good one. I hope we still are. And I really think that an open line of communication between me and y'all can benefit you guys and can benefit my readers. I know that Superintendent Coronado mentioned the rumor mill, kind of his struggles with that. I can be held accountable. My job is to dispel rumors and tell people facts. And I want to make sure that y'all know you can talk to me. I do make mistakes occasionally. I hate it. If I need to run a correction, call me, tell me. If you don't like it, call me and cuss at me. I have thick skin. I don't really care. But do please, even if nothing's wrong and you just feel that the article's not fair, that I'm missing something, call me and point it out, and I can take that into consideration. I watch every minute of y'all's meetings, so if y'all say something you think I might misunderstand, or that you think I might kind of have the wrong idea about it, call me and explain, and I'll certainly talk. I really just want to tell people the facts. Anyways, I think everybody's got my contact info. If y'all ever need me, call me, email me. Please do. I'm always available. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Okay, we now go to item 4. Discussion and possible action for the board to consider approval of the updates to the 2022-2023 Weslaco ISD compensation plan. Dr. Coronel.
Board President and Board Trustees, I hope you've had a good week so far. I know it's a little rain. Some say we've needed the rain, but so did our building, obviously, so it's got a few leaks, but we'll take care of that. I'm going to go through this presentation here, and I first want to say that we need to do this in phases, and so right now my focus is to address the heart of our district, which is our teachers and our instructional coaches. So that's going to be a bulk of this presentation. And so I just want to kind of clear the air with that part of it. And so we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And this is some good news, if you can see that. We are doing extremely well with our attendance. We're up 1,702 kids just from the 7th day of school since last year. I attribute a great team, both here at the district and also the campus level, the teachers, our support staff. I don't know where the kids are coming from. I'm not going to question where the kids are coming from. I'm just glad they're in school. So, but again, I think this is, this comes with some challenges, and we're addressing those challenges, but these are good problems to have. But I did want to share, if you read the news, how people are struggling with enrollment. We're actually on the opposite. We're dealing with enrollment gains rather than enrollment shortages. So I just want to say congratulations to all of our principals, staff, and a great district leadership team.
Dr. Coronel, does this
Yes.
include pre-K 3 also in the pre-K? Those kids, do they count as a person also, or does
Yes.
it not include pre-K?
It does.
It does. Okay,
It does.
great.
Okay, and I think expanding that into all 10 campuses really helped us
Okay.
as well. Okay. Next. I think what I'm going to do is go back to this one, and we'll do that one at the end as well. So I don't know if you've been tracking, I kind of a space geek, and I read this headline. This is the Artemis, which is a new Apollo program to the moon. So the Artemis is making its first launch to the moon. It costs $4 billion to launch this rocket. And so kind of monitoring this a little bit, and as I get ready in the mornings to go, but this is the headline that caught my attention. As you know, if you follow this as well, on Monday they were supposed to launch. But the headline was, "What went wrong?" And see, to me, I guess I look at it as, well, what went right? Because if they didn't identify a problem, that means they would have launched, something would have happened, and they would have lost $4 billion of taxpayer dollars, because this is how this is funded. $4 billion. So to me, I think the headline is wrong. Somebody did something to say, hey, something's wrong, there's a problem, let's fix it before we launch. And so what I'm going to cover here for the next few minutes is not what went wrong, but what we're doing right. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. So this is the agenda that we're going to cover. I want to cover some of the compensation plan updates. Now remember, as you have reviewed the compensation plan to include the TASB study, right, there is a myriad of things in there, but these are the areas that I want to focus on first. I'm going to have to chunk this over a period of months, and you'll hopefully I can articulate on the hows and the whys of what we're trying to do here. Next. So these were the market districts that we were compared to, and some of these I basically recycled from the TASB study. I want to make sure that we understand. Now, I will say that I'm not into whole averages sometimes, so let's say, for example, we want the average salary between LeBron James, annual salary, and a teacher. And that average is, right, we know that that's incorrect. So I would say that our average really needs to be looked at when we look at like districts. And if you look at them, I mean, we're bigger than Mission, we're about the same size as Harlingen, so we Donna's maybe a little bit smaller than us, and Mercedes is a lot smaller than us. So really to compare us, really I look at Harlingen a lot, and because, we're the midpoint between McAllen and Harlingen. So I really kind of look at some of their stuff more, specifically, because that's really who we're going to, when people want to go to a bigger district, they're going to pick one of us. So next. So this was their first recommendation, to adopt the proposed pay structures to simplify pay practices. Well, so I want to just kind of give an overview. When I got here on April 4th, there was a lot of things that had to get done. We shortened the fiscal year, which I totally support, but we had to really get the budget off the ground. We didn't have a personnel control system, which means, of course, we've been paying for this for years, but it's never been enacted. And so without personnel controls, then what ends up happening is we're flying blind. So I'll give you an example. What's supposed to happen in a district with personal controls is that this is on the finance side. This is not an HR function. So personal controls means that we have a system that allocates funding for each position. Instead, what happens is, in our district, and again, board members, just want to be very clear, right? This is a systemic issue that has been in the district long before anybody up here was here. I just want to make that very clear, right? This happened long before anybody was up here. Okay, so here's, and I'm gonna make this from the past, and I'm gonna fast forward this. So personal controls means that you allocate funding based on some formula. So we look at 22-1 for grades 3 and below. We look at, basically 25-1 for everybody else. And so we start allocating teachers and we start building a campus approach, i.e., we have one principal, we have so many assistant principals, we have 2 instructional coaches. And so those personal control items allocate funding for each one of those positions. So that's what's supposed to happen. But what's been happening here in the district is that with no personal control system, is that we allow our staff to be hired with no control. So, for example, Memorial. Memorial is busting at the seams. This is a good problem to have. They're approaching 1,100, over 1,100 kids already in there. And they need teachers. They need teachers. So the easy thing to do would be, okay, then let her hire some teachers. Well, but then where does that funding come from? Where does that allocation start with, right? But then we have other campuses who are short. So other campuses have 12, 14, 15 students per teacher, right? So if you look at it on the surface, at 16,359 students, we should have, just on the surface, 660 teachers. 660. Now, we have to allocate SPED, we have to allocate CTE, we have to allocate our supports, some of our support teachers, like our diagnosticians and our OTs, PTs, and so forth. And then we have some of our specialty, our hard to find, our AP teachers and so forth, right? Our elective teachers. So we have to add that. So you can take, typically between 25 and 30%. So what should happen is that we should have this calculation based on the number of teachers that we have, and we should have about roughly 1,000 teachers. That's what we should have in the district. And that's in the perfect world, right? Based on personal controls, we should have 1,000 teachers, right? That's the luxury. We currently have 1,100 teachers, right? Our 1,100 teachers right now are not evenly distributed. So that's a challenge for us, right? Because now we have some classes that have 35 kids in it, right? Because now they need support. So typically what happens in a school district is we usually wait the first week of school because we have a DRS system that tells us these are the people that should roll over, and maybe they didn't. And so that tells us one number, and then we have the actual registered numbers. Now I will tell you that I heard a story from one of our team members here, and it's an interesting story. Teachers know this. So there was a second grade group of teachers. Here, this just happened last week. There was a group of teachers, they knew the writing was on the wall. It's like, uh-oh, we don't have enough kids in our second grade class. That means one of us has to move. This really happened. So you know what those second grade teachers did? They called everyone on their list. They went to home visits, and they grabbed 12 kids just so they can keep their team together. Right? This is the kind of work that our teachers are doing. This is the kind of work that our campuses are doing, right? So we're still over though, right? We're still over. So without personal controls, right, we're flying blind. So I'm reluctant to say, okay, let them hire all of these teachers when we already have teachers, because now we have to figure out how to pay for it, okay? So I just kind of want to go over really the teacher perspective right now, because again, I'm prepared for that part of it.
What about,
Okay.
could you define personal controls? Can you go more into depth as to what you saw, what we should have and what we had? Can you talk about that?
Yes,
Are you
sir.
talking about personnel, departments, communication processes? I mean,
So
what
we
is
have
personal
it,
controls?
the district has been paying for personal controls attached. It's a module attached to Alio, which is on the finance side, right? And so what happens is every person gets what's called a PCN, which is a personnel control number, right? And that fund is allocated to that position, right? HR, the only thing HR does is put people in those positions, right? In other words, HR can't move to hire somebody without it being funded, okay? Now, the other problem that we have here is that we have, and Abel gave it to me and I forgot it, but, so, we have one teacher, and this is just one, we did a kind of a test to see how we can go ahead and put this into place. We have one teacher being paid out of 13 different fund codes. So things are gonna get lost in translation when you have that many funding codes. So this is the work, but you're talking this times 2,300.
Right.
So we have to be able to build this. So personal controls means that if we have 2,300 positions, we have 23 PCNs and 23 funding codes for those positions. We don't have that.
So you said HR assigns the personnel to the unit, to the opening.
Right.
And then where does it go from there? Or what is the process like?
So-
Because personal controls, it goes past that, right? Or I'm trying to understand. just
Okay.
To get a better idea how we got to this.
Well, I could, so here's how we got there. A principal says, I have 1,100 kids, and according to my formula, I'm short 3 teachers, right? Okay, hire 3 teachers. Knowing that they had 3 teachers in the district that they didn't need, that only had 12 kids in a classroom, right? Where one campus has 8 teachers, and they should only have allocations for 6. So there were 2 extra teachers, and these are just examples, right? So what should have happened, those 2 teachers should have been moved to the ones that were over. But without personal controls, right, again, that's funding allocated. So what the district has been doing over a period of years is just, the principal would say, I need these people, and we'll just go ahead and hire. We're gonna fill it in, right? And so that's why we're overstaffed. That's why we're in the position we're in now.
And so where did this start? I know you said that you've identified and made it clear that it didn't happen anytime soon. So what year did it start?
Well, so I talked to payroll about this. Again, this is a finance function. And he's been here for 26 years, and he says they didn't do it then either.
So every single human resource, I mean, the HR and technology, who's involved in this? HR, technology, et cetera?
It's actually built, so personal controls is actually built,
Right.
right? It's a collaboration between HR and finance,
Okay.
right? It's on, and because, again,
software.
HR can't can't hire somebody without it having a funding source.
Right, yeah.
Right?
An account.
Right, but that's the problem. So we're hiring folks without an account number.
So for 26 years.
For
it's
26 years, it's like, well, we'll just give them a teacher, let them hire,
Just
let them
throw 'em by
hire,
the
let them
hip.
hire, right? And that's why if you look at our audits, in our previous year's audits, you'll see the fluctuation in personnel. So this is, we tried to fix this, or when we looked at it, we said, okay, let's just start putting people in. And then when you start attaching a fund code, it's like, well, there's 13 fund codes, right? And so, or your Title I, for example, right? Well, they're split funded. Well, we're gonna put 25%, we're gonna take 4 people and we're gonna go ahead and divide it by 25%. So that means you need a maintenance of effort, you need a maintenance of effort, rather than just say, you're 100% Title I, everybody else is general fund. But we don't operate that way. So so what we're trying to do is, and this is painstaking, and so I have my recommendations after this, but, you know, we're going to have to, we still have to conduct the daily business of the district. So who do we have put this together when we've already realized that we don't have the staff, nor do we don't have the expertise to build that system, because this training, it has to come from Alio,
Right.
right?
You know, and I'm only asking because I know that it can get really tricky if you're not tracking staff and funding, because if you have somebody that's funded under federal and they're above and beyond, and so they're in say, in some kind of lab or some type of additional intervention during the day, principal then takes that person, puts him in a science classroom as an instructional teacher. The funding codes should change, because if not, you're having issues because you're using federal funds it's not in compliance anymore, and
We-
you're using the wrong funding code. So you said that's kind of what this.
And that's what's happening, sir.
for-
So some of our
so for
principals,
years,
oh,
yeah.
that's not, so there's a process.
Well, no, I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah,
I'm not saying
yeah.
that's happening here.
So there, the process,
an audit.
the process is that a principal has the authority to reassign
Right.
a teacher, but they have to let HR know so that they can be in the right PCN.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay?
But
And,
also,
and so that hasn't been happening for years then
That's
in
correct.
HR and
And
the
finance.
business office.
but Dr. Coronado, also the principals take part in knowing the number of students at the campus, right? And then saying, I need to be allocated 50 teachers because I have 22 times 50, 1,000, whatever,
the
right?
ratios.
Teachers play a major role also in working with HR to making sure that if I'm at 12 to 1, 12 to 1, 12 to 1, they shouldn't give up one teacher to whoever Memorial needs another teacher. Then, you know,
Consolidate.
it should be occurring where they transfer that teacher to that campus.
Yes, and you're absolutely right, sir. It's, the problem that we have here is, and I say it's a problem, but again, this goes back years. It's been a practice.
And what about, I know that they said, I remember the task report, and at one point, they also said that there was people classified as teachers, but they weren't instructing. They weren't in the classroom. Did we ever look into that?
Yes, sir.
And what was the situation there? Were they roving or?
So some of our teachers do rove.
Okay.
So that, because we don't have enough classroom space, you know, I know Weslaco High is an example, as I spoke to a teacher yesterday. He says, during my conference, I have to leave because another teacher comes in.
And what else? Because it was like 80, I forgot the number. It was a big number of people that weren't in classrooms. So what were they
Because
doing?
they float. They're still teachers, but they float. They don't have an assigned classroom.
Depending on the number of students, and
Right,
depends
right,
on the building, like West
Right.
High School, prime example. When I was there as principal, and we had 2,700 students, there was at least 10 teachers that would float, because we didn't have
The rooms.
the number of rooms.
And right now, Weslaco High, for example, I think they're pushing 26,
Now-
almost 24, 25,
Correct.
2,600
Right.
students.
Yeah,
Um,
Yeah,
so-
East is almost, I think, already going over
2,000.
2,000.
right.
I mean, these are all great problems.
Right, yes, no.
You know, but we're not distributed accordingly. And so, and those systems have to be built. And so we have been in a reactionary mode as a district for many years. And so, you know, and I think, and this is, there's nothing wrong. I was a principal. There's nothing wrong with beating the drum, saying, I need a teacher, I need a teacher. You know, and so we, you know, we react and say, okay, well, just give them a teacher,
Right.
right? Let them hire a teacher, but yet there's no funding source for that teacher. And that's the problem, right?
I'm just sitting here and I'm wondering, because now we've been questioning this for a couple of weeks with the compensation plan. These questions never came up years ago before any of us were on the board, this has been going on, you said, for 26 years. So it never popped into anybody's head. Let's see how these structures are organized. Let's see what are the steps every year. I don't understand how we let it.
So
I'm
I don't
saying
under-
we, because I'm part of Weslaco community.
Right.
How did it get like this with nobody asking any questions? It's okay to ask questions then. It's okay, because you need clarification.
But you know,
Absolutely. And again, I wonder the same thing.
But you
Like,
know-
how did this happen?
as a principal, you know, being a former principal, you want your classes to be at the high school, 25 to 1, preferably, right? Middle school, 25, elementary, 22. As a principal, you're gonna ask, you know, you know, I always tell people, if you don't ask, if they say yes or no, if they say yes, great. If they say no, okay, what is the next step? Because you want your teachers to have the 25 to 1 or 30. At the high school, you can have 30 to 1. You can have 35 to 1.
Yeah, there's no
But-
limit.
And you're saying
Correct.
HR needed the function, the
Yes.
budget, and obviously Ms. Zavala was not here, she just got here last year. But before her, so HR would just say, here you go, here's a teacher,
correct.
here's a teacher.
Here's a
So
teacher.
it kind of started there.
That's
Here you
right.
go.
I mean, that's the common practice has been, you know, and I'll use some of our campuses right now. I need a teacher. Okay, right? We already have the teacher in-house, because you have some teachers that have 15 kids.
So when are we going to find out, when the numbers are in of the
After second
attendance, how many weeks, next week, when will we find out, okay, these teachers need to go to this campus?
So we're actually working on that now.
Okay.
Good.
And that's why, and that's why, yeah, typically after Labor Day, you know, with Title 42 ending and now the migrants could come and so typically it's after Labor Day. We have until the 30 days after the first day of school to make sure that all the moves are done.
You know, and I've had calls too, and I've kind of told them that. I said, because I know not everybody watches the meetings, but I did tell them it was discussed and that you were going to level off after after enrollment period was over, because I know that some campuses were eager to hire, and they're trying to move as fast as possible to pick up teachers, because everybody's picking them up. You don't call them within a certain amount of time, they go somewhere else. But I said, I think you're going to be okay. I mean, you may not be getting who you want at that time or who you interviewed or who you like that's available, but they're probably going to send you additional help from other campuses, because there are some campuses with lower enrollment.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's a message you've already shared with your
Yes,
principals.
they are very well aware of that, and of course, and so what are they doing? The groups are getting together, call kids. If you don't want to leave, call kids.
Yes,
Start
yes.
recruiting, and
That's
that's, I mean, that's, and again, that's why, you know, our teachers do more than just teach from, you know, 8 to 5 or 8 to 4. You know, they do a lot more, and I think that, so that's why my focus is to kind of solidify some of the teacher compensation, and we can go over that more in depth here as we move along. But to your point, Ms. Ustaita, how did it get this way? I don't know. I know that it's happened for a very long time, and I just happen to, you know, as you say, well, we hired you to fix it. I'm like, yeah, so I'm gonna do what's right, even though it's going to be hard. And I think that's my challenge right now. Because doing the right thing is the hard thing to do. You know, I mean, the easy thing to do would just go ahead and let them hire, but then how are we gonna pay for it? And as you see, I already have a cost estimate on what we're trying to fix and what it's gonna cost us as we move on.
Doctor, my concern with all of this is if at some point we were heading in the same direction, so, you know, obviously the audit comes out 2012, 2014 up until right now, last year, 2021, nobody bothered to correct or to bring this to light or to, I mean, there's examples in the audit report where we just hire people without even them being added on the compensation plan. How, and I know now we brought everything to light, or we're bringing all this to light. How do we keep ourselves from repeating these? You know, my concern is, you don't, let's say we don't hire you and we stay with the other person that was here, and we would have just continued on blindly heading in the wrong direction. That's my concern. That's what's concerning to me, that we don't have the expertise levels here within the district to correct this. Obviously, I shouldn't say that, because now it's getting corrected, but it's going to take some time. But that's my concern, is if things didn't come to light, we'd be heading, I mean, we could have been down the road 5 years from now and still be in the same predicament, or worse. So, you know, I'm glad this has come to light and we're addressing it, but my concern is we still have people in place that have been from 2014, I'm going to say 2014 because that's how far the audit went or whatever, to 2021, but here we made some changes last year, and things didn't get better. Nobody, or half a year, whatever, whenever we did hire some new people, and things didn't get any better. We were still heading in the wrong direction. So that's my concern. It's, you know, everybody, there's a lot of salaries getting paid out. There's a lot of expertise required in these positions, and I don't know if we have those expertise.
So, sir, I can appreciate what you're saying, and I'm not gonna disagree with you. I think you're absolutely right, and we don't have, the way you prevent this from happening ever again is with personnel controls. which we have a meeting on September 7th to start building this. We've allocated time and external help to help us along that process. Now, the other thing I would say to you, sir, is that we may lack some expertise in some areas, but as a leader, our job is to create more leaders, not more followers. So part of the process is that we have to be careful with how we present ourselves as a team of 8, because when we want to attract folks, for example, we are also recruiting that help, right? We don't want to be able to showcase some of our. It's okay to have healthy disagreements, and when I say that, I mean that in all sincerity. We're not always going to agree, but we can still always be respectful to one another. And I think we've done a really good job of that, because when we start hiring, people look at our board meetings, right? And when we want to hire expertise, it's going to be, do I want to go there? So we're recruiting right now. We really are, because as soon as we say we have a position opening, they're going to go to our website. They're going to look at our board meeting. I did, right? Oh, Weslaco's open. Let me go look at their board meetings. Let me see what's going on. And then you have to ask yourself, do I really want to go there?
And that's
Right.
why even during those meetings, I would tell everyone during that time frame in those audit meetings, I was very vocal. A lot of other people were very vocal because we knew somebody out there was listening. And usually we knew there was going to be applicants eventually at one day, at one time. And like you said, you looked at those meetings and you saw exactly what we're about. It's transparency and being honest. And like you said, I love what you did with the organizational chart, because they have been missing that for a long time, where it's the community, the taxpayers, the parents, that they make that definition of community, and they're on top of everyone else. So, we answer to them as a board. And so that's why, I know that sometimes we have discussions and that maybe are detailed and whatnot, but it's just to answer questions and to inform the community in some cases. But yeah, you're right. Weslaco has always had a reputation of being at a higher level and presenting itself in a higher level, and the caliber of representatives that the community puts here, to oversee the organization. But I agree.
And like Mr. De Los Santos was saying, and, Jesse's concern being brought to light, being that we are at that level, what's going to speak volumes for us is how we're going to handle this proactively and not fall apart. Because it's easy to do this. What we need right now is solutions.
Right.
And you're going to present a plan that hopefully everybody will buy into and get us to move forward. Because right now it's about moving forward. We just started a school year. You identified something here. You're being very transparent about it. Now, what we're going to look for is what's the solution so that we don't get into the predicament that Costa Rica talks about.
And again, that's why I can appreciate, Coach Trevino's perspective. It's how did it get this way? We can talk about that all day, but that's not going to move us forward. Right. What's going to move us forward is, okay, again, it's not what went wrong. It's what went right. It's what went right in order for us to find this problem, right? And then we can figure out how never to do this again.
And just to add on what went right, you've told us before in our emails that we've shared, we are board members who have the privilege of seeing information that not everybody else can see. We're privileged with that information. So being the board member that I think all of us are trying to be, if you see something that just doesn't look right, or there's a red flag there, you would want to ask questions and bring it. If I sit here quietly and don't ask anything and don't advocate and don't speak up, then why am I sitting here? Because it's just easy to come in and sit down and nod my head and say yes, but I have to do my homework. And if I'm privileged with that information that's given to me and just doesn't sit right with me, I know those tough decisions and those tough conversations are going to have to be had. But it's not to disrespect anybody. It's not to put anybody down. It's just that that's our job up here. And we have the privilege of having the information that not everybody has. And so this is the reason why I want to thank you that we're having this meeting and going over the compensation plan again, because we've had meetings about compensation plans many times. This isn't the first one. But it's not easy to sit up here and make those tough decisions, like you said. Not everyone's going to like you or be happy, but it has to be the right decision. And the TASB study, I think, is a big guiding factor that we have to really focus on.
Yes, and again, I can't see you just sitting there and nodding your head. So you keep me on my toes, man. So I just want to say that.
But
So,
Dr. Dino,
yes.
when you came in first, you said, I'm going to build those leaders and have them become better. So with your guidance, your team, you have excellent personnel that you have, but it's going to take a year to evaluate those persons and say, okay, this person might work better over here, or this person, whatever you decide to do. But you said you were going to lead those people to become better. And so that's your job, with, of course, your leadership team and all the principals.
I told them all already, they're future superintendents, and they said no. So I said, well, you'll be ready for it if you want it. So we'll just go with that.
Doc, so just to clarify, it's expected, after this week, sometime next week, to start leveling off.
Yes.
So that's coming, unless they start recruiting.
Unless they start recruiting, and then we'll figure out how to pay for the other teachers. Right. But yes. Okay.
We just want to, I think the concern is that we don't want staff or parents to know that we had substitutes in there for too long.
That's
You know,
correct.
We need to get
Right.
full-time teachers in the classrooms, and however we need to do it, we need to do it ASAP. So, but I know we're the plan as far as leveling, so.
Right. Right. This is just a market graph. Again, this came right out of the TASB study. And I have a different slide, but this is based on the 21-22 this is what the Weslaco ISD salary was for 21-22. I just want to make that clear. Excuse me. Next. All right. Now we're going to get into some meat here. All right. So this is the 21-22 salary schedule. This was the one that you adopted in 2021. Now, I want you to look at the steps here from 0 to 25. They range from $100 to $1,000. Now, I'm going to be honest here. I couldn't figure this out. I didn't understand how you went from a 0 to 1, you got $1,000 increase in your step, and then you went from year 1 to year 2, and then you got $100 in a step, right? So I couldn't figure out the math at all, okay? So then we worked with TASB, who said the same thing. I can't figure out your steps. So they suggested a different one. So next, please. So that's this one. This is the current salary schedule, and this ranges from 400 to 900. This is the one that we're following as we speak. Now, if you look at the difference in percentages in the steps, there's no consistency whatsoever, right? Again, I couldn't figure out how these numbers came to be, right? And so what I tried to do then was I tried to determine what's the value. I took out the high, I took out the low, I averaged all of them together, and then I came up with a $550. So I had to reset. So what I did was I reset the salary schedule. So next. So there's the reset right there. Now, it is correct. If you look at a second-year teacher, it's $52,700. Now, don't be alarmed here because what I didn't do was change the starting salary of $53,500. So what I did was I took the $53,150, right, and then I added, I took the $52,150 from 2021-22 and I added $550. Because in my mind, right, every teacher deserves a step increase on an annual basis. But I needed a baseline. Right? So what I did was I took the baseline from 21-22 and I added $550 per step. Okay? And then, so what I did was I created a 22-23 adjusted salary schedule. However, right, next slide, please. Now I took the adjusted and I added a full 3%, right? We never did that before. The practice has always been, right, that we'll do, and forgive me because I don't want to make any other districts feel bad, right? Because they say 3% from the midpoint and they add a bunch of other language to it, but it's not 3%, right? So I was confused, right? Because I'm not used to doing it that way, right? To me, a 3% pay raise means that you take your check and you multiply it by 3% and that's what you get, right? We don't do that here, okay? I don't think anybody in the valley does it here, right? Everybody takes 3% from the midpoint. Well, what's the midpoint of a teacher when you have a salary step schedule? There is no midpoint, right? So what I did was I created a new teacher salary schedule, and as you can see, right, there is some consistency between step. All of our teachers, right, teachers, librarians, and nurses deserve a step increase. So let's say, for example, right, we're having financial difficulties, right, and we say that there's going to be a 0% pay raise, okay? Let's say, I'm not saying that, please don't.
It's an example, right.
It's just an example, right? If we said that there's a 0% increase, that teacher still deserves a step increase because they've earned it, okay? So what you see there is you see some significant differences in steps, right? So again, and now it's based on a full percentage, right? So now, when we say you're going to get, when I say that I'm recommending a 3% pay raise, right? Or as we're really approaching the 1,000 mark, a 5% pay raise, now we just add 5% to each one of those salaries.
To the steps.
To the steps.
So it would be 8.7.
That's correct. Right?
But in the past, they weren't doing that.
In the past, they were not doing it. They were just, so in other words, the 3% really wasn't 3%, right? Because they got a on average, it's 1.5%, right? So you say, well, you're going to get a 3% pay raise, and really all you got was 1.5%.
Because when we had the Weaver audit, that's something they had brought up about it. Like there was one year when the district gave it 4%, but they were seeing that there wasn't a full 4%. It was really 1.77. And they were shorted on that one. But you said that was, but you're saying because of the scale? Is that what you're saying? That's why they didn't give them. That's why some people got 0.77, 1.77 instead of 4%.
Because the steps were not standardized. I had to go back. And that's why if you look at the 22-23 adjusted, I went back and I adjusted the step, right, before I took the percentage. So I made an even distribution of $550, and then I reestablished that, and then I took the 3%.
So how were they calculating that? Like that was going to happen again, but and I know they've been doing that for a while. So how was that going to how does that get calculated? Is there like a computer that does that, or is that just like how is that input? Where is that extracted from, or how's that who puts that together?
So it would be easy if we had personal controls, because then we say this account number and we add 3%.
Yeah.
But we don't have that. So we're having to manually do this.
Dr. Coronado, but what I've researched and read, doesn't a compensation analyst or specialist, the expertise of that person is the mathematics on this?
Yes, but they need a starting point. And our problem was we didn't have a baseline starting point.
But if we didn't have a baseline starting point, as you identified with your expertise, what the errors were, you went back and fixed what had to be.
Recalculate.
So why couldn't our expert do that?
Like in one case, I asked her about the paraprofessionals. It's one of our meetings that are recorded. And actually, you gave a presentation on it, Mr. Sanchez gave a presentation. And we're trying to figure out how did people get these salaries, because the salaries weren't called into question at that time. That's when we're going through the audit and people were saying, hey, how did these people get paid so much? And at that time, and during that meeting, they said, well, there was even a presentation on it, and they said, well, it's because of the pay raises. They're getting 4% this year. They've been working for the district 15 years, and it's 4%, 3%. They went down all the pay raises. And that's what got us to that big salary, right? That was the justification of it at the time. It's a meeting that we had. It was an open session. I know a lot of people started ringing the phone because there's Hunches used the paraprofessional as an example, and people were just amazed that somebody was making that amount of money. But the justification for it was the fact saying, well, they had 4%. They got 3%, and over the 18 or 20 years, that full 4%, 3%, et cetera, led to excess amount. But you're saying that it's never actually worked that way.
No, and I'll tell you why. Because now, I'm not there yet with the paraprofessionals because I wasn't prepared for that today, but for
No, sorry about
paraprofessionals, right, they were done on an hourly, but the hourly was based on a min, mid, and max.
Right.
Right? And so when you say we're gonna do, and again, the district has always said, okay, we're gonna do 4% at the mid. So just hypothetically, let's say we have 10, 15, 20. 10 is the minimum, 15 is the mid, and 20 is the max. So 4% of the mid, right? So that's 60 cents, right? Let's say for 4%, it's 60 cents. Well, guess what? If you're making $10 an hour, it's not 60 cents, right? 4% is only 40 cents, right? So when we articulate a pay raise, right, it's actually based on 4% of the mid. But if you're below the mid, then it's less than 60 cents.
And if you're above the
And
mid.
if you're above the mid,
then
then it's more.
Yep.
So when people say, wait a minute, I didn't get 4%. So somebody making $10 an hour is, well, wait a minute, but I didn't get 4% of the mid. I didn't get 60 cents, right? I only got 40 cents.
Is that kind of what is going on right now?
Yes, sir.
I've had several come to ask, we're supposed to get something, but my paycheck is not showing any kind of a.
Well, so I will tell you, for all our 187 employees, right, their pay raise is not effective until September through August.
Right.
Right? So you gotta remember, like some of our custodians, well, not custodians, but our cafeteria workers, for example. Our cafeteria workers are saying, well, wait a minute, I didn't get a pay raise. Well, you'll see that pay raise September 6th, right? Because the 187 is paid from one September to August 30th. So some of them didn't see, right? But we, I guess we need to do a better job saying, well, wait a minute. Now, if you're above a 187, you're at 202 or 217 or 230, then yes, your pay raise went into effect July 1st to the fiscal year, right? But if you're a 187 employee, teachers, cafeteria workers, we have a bunch of people on a 187, they'll see their pay raise, their first part of their pay raise, and again, I'll discuss that later, September 6th.
But just for the record, we're talking about this group right here,
Right here.
but we're not overlooking all our employees because they all deserve.
Oh, so
Well, there's
there's 2,300
Right.
employees.
That are affected
right?
by it.
So we're only talking, I think I'm gonna only discuss 1,400 employees.
Right.
So
See, Mike-
the check for those employees that we're not discussing today, their check might not reflect their final
That's correct.
raise.
And the other issue, and I'm gonna.
Well, it's in the spreadsheet he sent us, and in there you see the breakdown of all of them, and they're all off.
Oh, yes.
That's
Yes,
my
sir.
concern. What are we gonna give them if it hasn't been?
I have a plan.
Okay.
I have a plan, right? I'm only on slide 4, I
All
think,
right,
so.
okay. Jumping ahead.
I know we're getting ahead of
Ahead.
ourselves,
Yeah.
but
Go ahead.
we're excited about
Fixing.
giving them their due diligence and consideration.
I think you're gonna be very happy, and I think the teachers are gonna be very happy. Now, I will tell you that there's another problem,
I know.
okay? So I'm gonna add to this. Some of our teachers are not being paid in accordance with their service record,
Right.
okay? So
The years.
we found, right, and I have to credit Ms. Doralice on this one because she found the box, right, with service records that weren't calculated.
Right. Yeah.
Right? No fault of hers, right? When we were doing the reconstruction of central office, right, we found stuff, and I'll give you another example. This is a true real world example. Teachers have been reaching out to me, and so, many of them are thoughts and prayers, and thank you, right? And so, one teacher was logged in at his year was 2012. Well, he started working with the district in 1995.
Right. Oh, yes. There's,
Right.
there's even coaches, teachers, instructional
Oh,
teachers
so,
and
so,
coaches that
so
weren't
we have
getting
to
their-
go back and find
Yeah.
some of these things, so again, this is, now take this times 2,300
Right.
to verify and to confirm, and oh, by the way, we still have the regular daily business of the district.
No, that's why I'm saying it's good we're having this discussion because the community, and I know that Ms. Zavala just got into the position, so we make that clear, we've all said that, right? This is an issue that's inherited, you've said it yourself, you know, it's a mess, it's been a mess for a while. So, yeah, I mean, we have to set those safety nets, go back, because, you know, I had mentioned to him too, there's some coaches, there's people, different people had told me that they were not getting, when they got hired, they weren't getting their full years of service. And
Well,
so,
even our deputy
That hurts their
superintendent he's off a year,
yeah.
right? Yeah, I mean, so he goes, well, I'm off too. I mean, I'm glad he doesn't complain, you know?
He volunteered.
But yeah.
Dr. Coronado, and I know the individual line, individually, it's gonna take a while, of course, to go through 2,300. But what I wanna do as a board is just set what we want as min, mid, max, as according to TASB, and you guys can figure the rest out yourselves with who needs what and what their salary is. As long as we as a board agree on the min, mid, and max.
Right, so, but remember, for teachers, librarians, and nurses, they are on a step schedule.
Yes.
And not a mid, and max.
Yes.
So that's why, and that's what bothered me, right? And I shared with you all that I feel horrible, right? Because there is no mid, and max for a teacher. You're either step 0 or you're step 25.
And one of the things I was gonna ask is, it was going back to the Weaver report, and only because they had identified it, but they couldn't get the information. They couldn't get that file as much as they wanted, they asked for it. The file that you sent us, that showed us the actual compensation
Right.
increases and percentages, at that time, so we had to move on, because they just couldn't get access to it. So, but what they did find was that, and I want to see if we can go back and look at that, is that they saw that it wasn't like a glitch or a system error, because they said, well, some people weren't getting the raises, but yet some people were getting the proper amounts. And so I wanted to identify that, like troubleshoot that as far as how was that happening? That's what I would like to know. How is it that some people were getting their appropriate raises during the different years? Because they went back to 2014, like Mr. Trevino said, and they said, but then we saw that others weren't. Others weren't getting the proper raises, increases. And they had to go based off of salaries, but that was very difficult. We had to sample because some people have additional healthcare resources, things like that, that modify their checks. So that's what I would like to know, so that way we can put that to rest.
And so we're gonna do this, you know, we're
I know
gonna do
it's
this
gonna
right.
take time.
We're gonna do this right.
I just wanted to point out a couple things, just because there's a whole lot of questions and a lot of things too, you know, that Dr. Coronado came on board in April, and it kind of just all, I think the volume of the things that needed to be, you know, fixed, it took some time to realize, wow, this is, you know, a whole lot of stuff. I do want to point out, just to Coach Trevino's point, that, you know, when Mr. Buttermer and I came on board, a lot of those things, the practices were identified. I mean, if you remember, we put together a plan based on some of the things that, you know, we had seen. We actually started back in February with the trying to establish those ratios with principals. We met with every single one and talked about the fact that practices of, well, I lost a science teacher, so that means I get a science teacher. You know, we sat down and met with them, and we had our external funding person with us and explained that that's really not the way it works. You have to look at ratios and you have to look at allocations. So I do want to say that, you know, we did start that process, and we did start at looking at a personnel control system. We did not know at the time that we didn't have one. I think what happened a lot in the past, and I can't speak for anyone else because I wasn't here, but just from talking to people who were, I think perhaps maybe the right hand wasn't talking to the left. So there just wasn't that communication, you know, about, well, this department knew, this department didn't, or this department used it, this department didn't want to, you know, and we really, at this point, you know, it was kind of like, well, you know, whatever happened, happened. This is what we need to do now. So the process, you know, that Dan and I started was, talking to companies and trying to get demos in, and let's look at what are the different options that are out there for us. And then discovering, hey, Alio does have one. And I think that was right around the time that Dr. Coronado came on board, that we all discovered together, there has been one in the system. You know, it's been here and we haven't been using it. So, but like he said, it's a very long process because you have to clean up years and years of decisions that were made. And just, I don't want to get into details too much, but you have a comprehensive system. You have your Alio finance system, and it's different modules, right? But if you have each department setting up their own modules and they're not really talking to each other, then you're going to set up what's best for you, right? This is what works for me. This is how I'm going to establish my codes. This is how I'm going to establish my systems. And then you have the other department saying, okay, well, I'm going to do it this way too. But the thing is everything integrates. So if you don't talk to each other and do it together, then you have years and years and years of all of this building. And now that we come back and see that it actually all works together, oh gosh, we got to go back and change that now because it was set up in a way that is not conducive to working together. So now there's the time that it's going to take to fix it. And then in speaking to the teacher pay scales, you know, because Dr. Coronado is absolutely right. You know, these are things that even when I was a teacher, I always felt like, why don't I get a step? That doesn't make any sense. You know, I've been here a whole year and it doesn't, you know, and then, you know, I'd always just get a flat rate. How come I'm just getting $1,500? Or why am I only getting $3,000? And it really was never explained clearly. Being on this side now and going through with Erin Kalecki, with our TASB finance analyst, and having her explain the whole process and how districts do it, is that it is common practice to take that median salary, you know, from a salary schedule to look at the average teacher schedule or salary. So what is the average teacher salary? Calculate 3% of that. In this case, it was $1,700, and give $1,700 to everyone, because he's right. Because nothing was ever standardized, you have teachers kind of everywhere. And, you know, Mr. Los Santos, to what you were saying is, that's right too, because you had some teachers who got this raise here, and then others who came in and they got this raise here. And so now they're all over the place. You know, just like Dr. Coronado said, you have salaries all over the place. So it's really hard to go back and say, well, every teacher with 15 years of experience should get this. Well, you can't, because this teacher may have come in at this time, and this teacher came in at this time. So you have different things that happened when they came into the district. This one might have been here when they had the 3% raise, but this one wasn't. So their salaries are going to look different. So what Dr. Coronado is trying to do is what I think a lot of districts, and it happens every time he does something new, right? Other districts come back and say, Dino, why'd you do that? I think we're going to start to see other districts, because in working together with this, I called Erin again. I said, hey, Erin, you know, this is what Dr. Coronado's wanting to do. She says, I saw him at Region 1. I was waving him over. I think maybe he just didn't see me. Maybe he didn't want to see him. I don't know. But anyhow, she says that's actually a really good idea, and it's something that it takes a lot of work to do it. So some districts are just reluctant to do it because it's not that what they're doing is wrong or what was done was wrong. It's just that there are better ways to do things. So let's look at how we can build that and do that. It's a long process. It takes time.
You know, to respond to what you're saying, well, we're second to none, so they should follow and do what we do, right?
Absolutely.
So, you know, we're WISD.
Absolutely.
But one of the things is like when we advertise to staff and we tell them 1,700, et cetera, 3% across the board on average, and we put that on paper and we advertise that, and they don't see it, and I go back, and we brought it up. We brought it up before the audit. We brought it up during the audit, and like I said, you weren't here at the time. You have nothing to do with that, right? But we brought it up, and it was even discussed and presented here. That yes, it was 4%. You were getting 4% off your salary. You know, we were telling that to staff, but it wasn't happening. You know, and so my thing is in the office, and we told the superintendent, you know, whatever resources and training and anything that you need, we said as a board, we're going to support 100%. You know, as far as the business office, HR, et cetera, whatever departments need more, anything as far as training, give it to them, and let's get back to where, at the level, you know, where we need to be or wherever they want to put it.
Right.
But it was going to happen again this year, you know? And so that was kind of the situation where we had to have we were calling for a meeting to discuss it because payroll was right around the corner.
And I think because you're right, there's a confusion. So I think it comes down to precision of language, right?
Yes.
And how we explain it. So if what the board adopted on May 17th, you know, when TASB made that recommendation, and the board said, yes, we're going to go ahead and adopt that as our compensation plan.
Right.
And then when we went, you know, in June with the budget, and there were a few amendments, but it was adopted again, I think, you know, at the time, you have to ensure that you're precise with the language, that you're precise, that, you know, when we say, okay, we're giving 3%, let's make sure that we're articulating exactly what that recommendation was, right? Because it is 3%. It's 3% from the average teacher salary applied to every teacher. It's 3% from the midpoint of your pay grade applied to every person in that pay grade. And just like Dr. Coronado said, so for some people in that pay grade, depending on what M they are, it's not really a 3% because it's 3% from the midpoint. So it's a set amount, right? So for this person, that set amount might be a little more than 3%, but this person, it might be a little less, depending on where they fall in the pay grade. So it does come down to that precision, making sure that we're articulating it correctly.
And Ms. Zavala, you just said a big word, communication. It's all about communication. I remember years ago when I was teaching, I still had a paper check to pick up at the office, and Dr. Rivera was the superintendent back then, and he would put a letter in
Yes.
every paycheck. You know, he would always fill us in on what was going on. Every
Yes.
month there was his
His
monthly
message.
message.
Right.
And so, obviously, to avoid the confusion and to avoid all these, oh, hey, what's going on? All these phone calls or negativity going, what's going on? You read a lot of things out there that a lot of it's not true, you know, but we can't go out there and say, no, that's not true. But communication is key, and you guys are have the advantage that you have the keys to communicate with the staff and let them know, hey, this is what's happening. And I think that's really important. And just like you said right now, the compensation plan that we approved from the TASB study, and I talked to Dr. Coronado earlier, other districts have the mid and max, not with teachers obviously, but other pay grades, but they have the annual salary also. And maybe it's in your slides later on, I'm not sure. But they have the annual salary according to each. And that helped, I think, for me, that makes it a lot more clear.
So
instead of
you
just seeing
mean
a
rather
daily
than
rate.
seeing like the hourly or the daily? Yeah.
Well, it has like for example, Harlingen. I emailed the board members this. Harlingen has the mid, max, and then it has the corresponding annual salary
Right.
with that. And then and then TASB even gave us 20 years as midpoint, and it has the steps, step 1, step 2 on the TASB study. So if we could have something like that for our compensation plan online, it would make it so much more transparent for the public, for the staff, for us to really understand.
To calculate the tables, so that the
Yes.
tables don't just include the daily or the hourly, they also include the annual.
The annual.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Right.
definitely something that can be done,
Because
yeah.
that's something we talked about, that's kind of what led to the workshop, and that was the discussion there. You know, where we approved the compensation plan, but we were not told that there was going to be increases. We were just told, hey, it's a lateral transfer, I'm appointing, I'm transferring somebody, I'm just reassigning. Well, as a board, we're still the governing board. We still
Right.
have to look over the taxpayers' dollars and everything and whatnot, and courtesy. And at that time, we didn't know, until after the fact. And I think that's what, because you just see
We
the
were
range.
shocked.
Like, people don't know what we're talking about, right? We do. But you'll see like it starts at $262 a day, then it goes to maybe 386, and then it goes to a high of like 435.
Right.
Well, we don't know we didn't know what we're approving at that time.
Unless you take a calculator out and you
Right.
calculate.
Right,
We know that
exactly.
60,000 or
So that's why
150,000. We don't know.
Right.
Okay, and so we, I asked for the previous year's compensation plan. I guess this is the first time it's ever been published on our website.
Right,
This
exactly.
year. So,
Thank you for
so
that.
I'm glad that a lot of people are questioning it, because that's how we get better.
Yeah,
Um,
I asked
and
for that
so-
compensation plan for a whole year until
Before
I
you
got
got
it.
it.
You weren't here, but I asked for it for a whole year, and then I finally received it. Yeah.
Well, just so you know, we had to dig through boxes to find previous year's compensation
I could
plan,
imagine.
so.
Yeah.
So I and as I mentioned, the last meeting, it's a very fluid, this year it's a very fluid document.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that it was gonna be Niagara Falls fluid, but it's very fluid, so, but we're working on it,
Yeah.
and the only thing we can do is get better.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Taking it to another level.
So, and I'm gonna give an example here, if you can kind of follow my math here. So I'm gonna use an example of a teacher with 10 years of experience. So, under the old, if you look at 10 years of experience, they were making $57,850 last year. So now, they move to a step 11, right? And they move to 60, what I'm proposing, or recommending rather, is that they go to $60,152, which is a $2,300 annual increase. So you can actually feel that pay raise.
Right.
Right? And why? Because they received the 3% plus the step.
Yes.
Okay?
That's a great point.
And we weren't doing that before. So I just want to I want to make that very clear. You know, we've said all along that we are going to honor the heart of our district, which are our teachers. You know, we know that the backbone is our support staff, but the heart of our district are our teachers. We're not where we should be or where we want to probably see our teachers, but we have to start somewhere, right? With the increased enrollment that we have right now, I think these are good moves to recognize the hard work of our teachers, but at the same time, it's a start. It's a good faith forward, right? And it's just something that they deserve. I wish it could be more, and wait till you see the price tag, but I wish it could be more.
We're gonna keep pushing. Now, sir, just to clarify, I think it's a great idea, what you're doing and the structure you're putting in place, but the next time we do a raise, so right here, if you're looking at 3.78 as the step, next time we do a raise at 3%, it'll be a full 3%
It'll be a
on
full
top of the
3%.
3.78.
That's
Okay.
whatever that step increase is,
We're
which is
not
going to
doing
be.
mid,
No,
none
no
of
more.
that, no more.
No,
Okay.
it's too messy.
Right. And then plus, I just, I think it's really good for them.
Yeah.
And the steps make sense now, right?
Yes.
The steps
Right.
are
And again, so some people, when they look at the adjusted, oh, look, I'm taking a pay cut. No, I had to standardize the separation between steps, and then I took the 3% from that standardized.
So that 5%, if we hit that goal,
Oh,
which I
they're
know they're
gonna
working
be-
hard.
yeah.
Yeah, I know the price tag, but it's gonna be 3.76 plus 5, or whatever the step.
It's
what
gonna,
the
so
steps are.
if
Right.
somebody wants to take 5% of this, then yeah, they can
Yes.
go out there and drag 3 more kids.
Okay.
So, yeah, so, yes.
So to clarify, teachers this year
Right.
better receive the 3%, but also receive the step
Right.
that they're
That's
supposed to
correct. Yes.
receive.
Yes, so what I'm proposing here, what you see is what's highlighted in yellow is my recommended teacher, librarian, and nurse salary schedule.
Right.
That's what I'm going to be recommending.
And they'll see this in their September paycheck?
Yes.
No,
No.
no.
It's gonna
And
take
that's-
time to
that's-
implement.
That's going to, I'm gonna,
Phases.
yeah, okay, I'll go through it.
Yeah.
So, okay. Next, please. So this is the recommendation, again, the 3%, and this is kind of, and I put down where a teacher would be at for 5 years, 10 years, 15, and 20, right? And here's what I would like to add, that the way we've restructured our teacher salary is that we really value our veteran teachers.
Right.
I want to make that very clear, right? The value that we're placing on our veteran teachers, and you can see the difference between a 0-year teacher and a 10-year teacher, right? Versus a 15-year teacher and a 20-year teacher, right? It's a significant pay increase. So I just want to make sure that I'm very clear that we're on a trajectory to really value our veteran teachers. That's one of the things that TASB said, is that we have a very, very seasoned teaching corps.
Right.
And I think that's something that we need to value.
And Doc, to highlight, we're on each of those years' experience, we're above the market.
That's correct.
Market median.
We are the place to be.
Right.
Next slide. All right, instructional coach salary. So they were on a different pay schedule, pay salary, and one of the things that I heard in talking to a bunch of the instructional coaches was, I'm not getting my teacher experience recognized, right? I mean, we only have 36 instructional coaches, right? So what we did here was we recalculated this. So in the example that I use here is a 10-year teacher. So if I've been in the classroom for 10 years, I make $59,534. Again, would be based on the recommendation, if you approve this today. $59,534. And that's for 187 days. So what I did was I calculated my daily rate of 318. An instructional coach makes 5% more, or should be making 5% more than a teacher salary. So we take the 318 daily rate, we multiply it by 1.5, and we get the 334. Now, but our instructional coaches now work 207 days, right? So then we have to multiply their new daily rate times the 207. So now we are recognizing a teacher with 10 years of experience making 59,000. Now they go to a 207 contract, right? And they get a 5% increase, and so now their base salary would be 69,195. So we haven't been calculating, or we haven't been recognizing our instructional coaches' teacher experience, right? Because they've been on a different pay grade.
Right.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying this is the way I prefer to do it,
Right.
okay?
Dr. Coronado, then now that you bring that up, there was a recommendation on the TASB study, and I actually made copies for us, but I'll give them to you guys later. And it says, we have to provide adjustments to ensure that education or administrative professionals, like say for a teacher who becomes an assistant principal, we've heard already about cases where their daily rate stays the same, right? Because they went from a teacher to an assistant principal. So TASB recommended that, it says here, the educator career path will be paid at least 3% above what a teacher with the same degree and experience will be paid. So is this kind of what you're saying here with the instructional coaches?
Exactly. So I'm going to tell you another systemic problem, okay? Is none of our salaries have been scalable. So in other words, what happens is, and here's probably the best example, our subs, right? What we've done is we've increased our sub salaries, right? We pay our subs very well, right? But we've outpaced our instructional aides, right? So in other words, now it's like, well, I'll just be a sub because I can only work 18 days and I get to make more money. So now we can't recruit instructional aides. So what happens is that when we start developing our salary schedules, we need to make sure that they're scalable, right? And that they are aligned. What we end up doing, in the district, again, this happened a while ago, we're only gonna change the subs, but we're not gonna change anybody else. Or we're gonna change teachers, but we're not gonna change our instructional coaches. We're gonna change our teachers, but we're not gonna change our administrators. So it doesn't allow for scaling, right? So that's the problem that we have. So when we have, let's say, for example, when we have a teacher of 15 years, all of a sudden now, you know what? I want to become an assistant principal. Well, because it's not scaled correctly, they take a pay cut because we start our APs at a certain level.
Right.
Right? And here we don't honor their hard work, we don't honor their degree. So, but what we're doing is we're not scaling equally, right? And so I think we need to address that. And so, but I hope that answers your question, because
Yes.
we're not scaling our salaries correctly.
And we're working on fixing that this year?
This year.
Okay.
Yeah. Wait
'Cause
till you
I've
see
been
the price
asking for
tag.
a
Yes,
while
yes.
on that same question, and I never got a.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
because,
Okay.
I mean, it's been since 21,
I've been
or,
asking.
yeah, since spring of 21, when we started talking about inconsistencies in pay.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. It was the
Because
scales.
what we're doing is we're fixing one problem at a time
Right.
versus looking at the problem as a whole.
Oh, the whole.
Okay?
So what we're gonna do what TASB says and recommends at 3%, or the 1.5%, or how are we
So
doing
I did the
this?
instructional coaches at 1.5%. I still have to do some math
Okay.
for the other ones. I
Okay.
haven't done the math yet.
Okay.
Okay? We good?
And
Oh, you're good.
Dr. Coronado,
Yes.
on this teacher, library, and nurse salary schedule, it goes up to 25 years.
Yes.
Are you gonna have a additional for the other steps?
Yeah, you guys are GT today, right? You guys are all ahead of me, right? So,
Perfect.
Okay, all
Good.
right. Next.
Okay,
All right, here we go to
there
answer
you
your
go.
question.
okay.
So, now, I studied this at length across the state and across the country. Clearly, there are caps when we talk about salary maximums. So what happens, because I tell you, we have a very seasoned workforce. We have teachers, we have 186 teachers, right? Teachers, nurses, and librarians. 186 with over 25 years of service.
Yeah, we have a very, TASB
Yeah.
report.
So I mean, this is nobody leaves Weslaco, which is good. You know, so how do we maximize, and how do we, you know, because part of our system not only has to be recruitment, right? But it also has to be retention. How do we retain, our effective teachers? And so what we don't have is a way to exceed the max, right? So what we have to be able to do is build in a longevity stipend. Now, a longevity stipend is a practice that many districts, and not just school districts, but many organizations, so let's say, I read, let's say, for example, a custodian, right? So a custodian is capped at a certain amount, right? And so it's hard to be a custodian and still make $50 an hour because they kept on getting 3%, 5%, 3%, and so forth, right? So within that pay grade, there's a max, and that max is established by the range of the mid, and max. Well, so what happens when you've hit your max, right? And that's the problem that we have. We had no mechanism in place to build in or to add to their stipend or to add to their salary. They've hit their max. So that's why we worked at this, and how do we correct that? And we correct that with the longevity stipend. So if you're a 25-year teacher, our pay scale goes up to 25 years. Now this is going to be a hard pill to swallow. Okay, I'm just going to say that. At 25 years, you automatically get the $13.50. Right, and that's built in. So your pay raise is not 4% or 3% or whatever it is, right? Because you've already hit your maximum. The only way that your salary is going to go up is if we change the max, right? Now, again, I'm going to go back to what we talked about scaling, right? Now, in theory, if we provide a 3% pay raise, that scale should slide. Our mid, and max should all slide forward, right? So hopefully the max ends up getting larger, but in the event that it doesn't, so we have a teacher here that has 52 years of service, right? So clearly they've hit their max. So the longevity stipend is for continued, I'm trying to read and at the same time, continued service only in Weslaco ISD, but it has to be consecutive. So let's say I work for Weslaco ISD for 10 years, right? And then I leave to go to another district, right? You know what? Sometimes you don't know what you're missing until you leave, right? And then you end up coming back to Weslaco ISD, right? We still honor your years of service in terms of your pay calculation, but you start in terms of longevity at year one, okay? So many of our teachers, right, that are here have continuous service. So how do we do that without breaking the cap? How do you break the cap as a custodian? We have security guards, for example. The max is, I don't know what the max is off the top of my head. So we have a max at a security guard. Let's say, I'm going to make up these numbers, folks. I'm just going to make these up, right? So the max is $30 an hour. Well, they've been here, so they're at $30 an hour. Well, since we can't give them the 4% because they've had their max in their pay grade, right? Then we give them the 13, and if they've been here for 25 years, then they are awarded the $13.50 annual stipend. So that's how we do that.
I think,
And it'll be every year?
It'll be every year.
After the 25 or
Yes.
whatever the number
but
is.
we,
correct.
but we couldn't extend the 25? I mean, I think that's, you couldn't extend the scale on the.
So
instead of-
so I had it out to 32.
Well, that's all, yeah,
And-
35.
So we did it to 32, and then I think
I mean,
if the board wants to approve that, just understand it's going to cost us about another $500,000.
Well, I'm just saying because I'm thinking of teachers that we have now, and our average is about 15 to 20. I mean, that's a lot of staff that we have now. That's the bulk. If you look at the tax report, yeah, it was 15 to 20, right? About that range. And I mean, why cap expertise? I mean, you have that talent there.
Well, most of the districts that we looked at, they go to 25,
Right.
which is pretty standard. Not in Weslaco is not standard.
That's what I'm
right?
saying, we're not.
Again, we have 186 or 184, or it's
Right.
one of those, right? 184, I'm sorry. So 184 people, just in this category, right, that have over 25 years. Now, if we look at over 25, all employees, it's 546. I don't know what we talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a large number of them. Yeah, there's a
It's,
large group.
it's almost 550 people that have been here for over 25 years.
And they deliver, though. I mean, that's what I'm saying, like, they deliver. I mean,
Again,
they knock it out of the ballpark.
there,
And-
it is hard to complain
Right.
about the people that we have in Weslaco,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's some
something
long,
else.
I mean, there's some long haulers in here. Well, I mean, that's great. So clearly, we're doing some really great stuff, and we have been doing some great things, you know?
And those stipends, Doc, the longevity stipend, that's gonna apply to
Everybody
All
over to all employees.
employees.
All employees.
who have maxed
Who,
out.
all employees who have
Max.
maxed.
Maxed out.
Max.
Yeah, oh, yeah, make that clear. She keeps on correcting me,
Oh,
yes.
that's a big clause right there.
Yeah.
If you max.
If you max,
If you look
yes.
at the slide, it's subject to the if you're eligible to the compensation.
No, you're,
Oh,
Right.
that makes a big difference.
Right.
just, you said all employees?
All employees who have maxed.
So max.
Okay.
All employees who have maxed, right?
But
Because
but even here, if they've had 10 years of service
of Weslaco ISD.
at West ISD, they still qualify for that stipend.
Right, so in other words, here's how
But
this
on a
works.
teach- on a
So let's
teacher, it's
say,
different.
so let's say they hit their max, but they've only been in Weslaco ISD for 10 years, but they've hit their max.
Right.
Right, for previous experience or whatever the case may be, then their stipend is only $600. Okay, that's how that works.
But like in a teacher scenario situation, they would lose money once they cap out, because they're getting a flat rate of $13.50, but they may miss a 4%, 5%,
They
and then
could.
plus steps.
That-
Because they would get it at
Because
the
they would get
25
it.
plus step.
Right, they would only get the $13.50.
Right.
That's why I was saying that's something maybe the board should consider, extending, because, 25 is kind of short in the lifespan.
So we had the numbers for 32.
Yeah.
We had the numbers for 32.
We did.
So, and then
Quite
we,
expensive, but I mean, it's
Yes.
something that we can look at.
yeah, because our teachers that at the 32 mark, I want to say they were making 78,000.
Yeah, but they knock it out of the ballpark, I mean, and that's one of the things that we were saying, their productivity, I mean, they're delivering.
We would definitely be first
Right.
to do that because nobody else goes beyond 25.
Yeah,
And if I could just say that, and this board, I think, is the first full board who has really looked at the rules of the compensation plan, and maybe because it's been available right now, so you can
It
read
is
it. In reading the rules and understanding how they're applied and articulating, your commitment to sticking to those rules, routinely in the past, when an employee maxed out, it was kind of, well, we'll give them the raise anyway, right? Give them the raise anyway. And then, like Mr. Saita pointed out, when it was discussed, you have some of those really inflated salaries, because, and not that people don't deserve it, but
Right.
again, you have to consider why structures are put in place, right? And positions should be career paths to another position, right?
Right.
And that's kind of how you grow. So this allows us to still follow the rules of the compensation plan, but then still reward those folks who have that tenure with the district and that commitment with the district. So, yeah, it was
I-
it
No,
was a really nice.
I believe that be in order, we talk
Right.
about a half million or whatever. It's a lot of money, but look at what we're getting in return for our community and for our future.
Absolutely.
and
That's
well
what Mr.
invested.
Aguilar likes to call the ROI, right? Our rate of return.
right, yeah.
Return on investment.
return on investment,
Yes, our return, thank you for that, yeah.
And just to learn from our mistakes from the past, whoever, the max wasn't looked at, or who's going to be in charge now moving forward of keeping tabs of, okay, these people are at their max, no more. Who's duty
So
will that be?
it's always been the same thing. It's always been kept in data files. It's kept in Alio. It's
Okay.
in the system. It's always been in the system. We do have a senior programmer who uploads all of that information,
Okay.
and when we took, for example, this one instance, and again, I couldn't tell you how it was in the past because I wasn't here, but, with the TASB study and the recalculation, we send them all the data, all of our data files, everything. This is everybody, this is their salaries, this is their experience, these are their positions, these are the pay grades they're in. And then they run all the calculations, they send us back the data file and said, okay, this is where everybody should be.
So it'll be
And then
payroll?
we upload that. Yeah, well, we hand it over to.
Technology.
It's technology.
Technology.
It's our programmer. And he works with us, he works with payroll, he works with, in instruction, he works with everybody. He's
So the
kind of a-
programmer will be in charge of
He
making sure.
uploads the file. Oh, no.
Okay.
He doesn't check it for accuracy. He uploads the
Okay,
file.
so who'll check for
So then
accuracy?
We have to check it,
Okay.
payroll has to check it. I mean, there are multiple places where it has to be reviewed for accuracy.
Okay.
But again, if we had that position control system, it would be so much easier. So,
We're moving to.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see, because I do payroll at our office, and I can see how somebody who, the lady who does the hours, if she doesn't know what the max is for Jesse, I'm going to keep putting on his paycheck because she didn't tell me. So I just want to make sure there's somebody there who tells me, that's it for this person,
Right.
no more. They're
Right.
at the max.
And I think in the past, we've had that discussion, about, okay, is this raise gonna apply to those maxed out employees? And I think as a board, I think we've, decided to allow them to have it because of being generous, I guess.
And this is new. We haven't had a longevity stipend in the district before. So this is new.
So with the PIM system, good afternoon, members of the board, with the PIM system, one thing, just with our initial meetings that we're looking at, as we're peeling back the layers of that onion, we're identifying a lot of those scenarios. And once we start tackling it and breaking it down, that's where we're gonna determine the scope of the work. Okay, because as Dr. Coronado mentioned earlier, you got certain positions that have multiple accounts. You have the positions control that's coming in, different categories and so forth. So the problem with that is right now, who's gonna look at it? We can't upload it into a PIM system. It doesn't matter what program we have until we clean it up. And until we clean it up, that's when we can start operating, as Dr. Coronado mentioned, we're gonna add the 3%, click of a button, then you have your numbers.
What's the estimated timeline to clean it up?
Take a while. He said
I want to know, 'cause people
So-
are going to ask us when.
I'm
So
laughing because-
because we've had this, because my deadline was October 1st. And so.
we were ready
so
to
Doralisa
meet
and-
that
and-
deadline. We
so,
were.
Yeah, but they said October 1st, 2023, and I'm like, that's not good
So
enough.
we were ready to meet that deadline until our programmer came back and said, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to go line by line, item by item. And there's a team of, what are we, about 12 of us that are going through and having to, and again, like Dr. Coronado says, this is on top of the business of the district, right?
Right.
You gotta
Yeah,
get-
the
And
daily-
so we talked about, well, I mean, could we maybe contract out, or could we get someone to come? But it comes down to, yeah, it has to be someone who knows the way the system has been operating and where we want it to be, right? So, we are doing our very best. He has given us deadlines, and so we're trying to be efficient with our schedules to be able to block out time and say, okay, this day, we're taking this whole day and we're gonna tackle this, So we are doing our very best because we want to. And just to make it clear, because it has been, just in the almost a year now, that I've been here, I think one of the things that Mr. Buttermer and I noticed when we came on board was that difficulty in tracking, because you don't have a system. So you end up having things in databases or in Excel sheets, and trying to keep track of those things. And when you don't have, that program or that avenue to be able to have systems talking to each other, right, and see the same thing. You have one department who sees this and another department who sees this. And just so you know, there's never an employee who's hired without a funding source, right, without a funding code. What the difficulty is discovering what is that funding code, and is it the right one? And is it just one funding code, or is it 10? Because, you have some that have 2 and some that have 5 and some that have 10, and discovering the purpose of that, so it's going to be a big task.
You guys were caught in and I talked to Dr. Coronel in person, and I said, you guys caught into a situation where you had an exodus, and then you had an influx of new teaching staff coming in, and then you came into a department that for years was not where it needed to be and neglected. That's a fact. And I told him, I know he's very aggressive, and he's mentioned about his deadlines, and I said, sir, we have to have realistic time. I mean, no, I didn't say they weren't unrealistic, but he's very aggressive. I said, it's years. I could only imagine what you're walking into. It's kind of like, I mean, I know how my garage is, and I just close the door and walk back out. But it's just gonna take time to fix that. And like me personally speaking, only for myself, is that, how do I say it? I usually say in Spanish, nada bueno se hace rápido. You gotta
Yes.
you gotta take your time. Nothing good is gonna come out of doing something super fast. So
Thank you for recognizing that,
Right.
because we are tackling that, we're looking at it, and the thing is, we want to make sure it's done correctly.
Right.
But in order for us to identify the question, that was a very good question, what's a timeline? You start peeling back those layers, and then you hit another roadblock, or you stop, and we got to look at this, and so we've come across several scenarios.
Right.
But we're going to start tackling it, and then see how much of it can we fix from within, and how much of it do we have to outsource? Okay, because we still have to work in meeting our timelines, but we want to do it correctly.
amazing what you're dealing with. Good luck.
Thanks.
Yes,
Thank you.
So that talks a little bit about the longevity stipend. If you'd like for me to take it out to 32 years, we can do that. And then, so we actually had two scenarios here, and we actually changed it at the last hour, because what we ended up doing is we took this out to 32 years, and then we said, okay, well, let's start at the 15 years of continuous service. So we have two, so we already have it built. It's just a matter of which one you want to approve. But again,
Well, you mentioned that, how many are in that gap right there between 30 and 35?
Right.
Or you said between 25 and?
20, yeah,
25.
so 26 years beyond service is 186, but only 186 teachers.
Right.
Right?
Right, it's
So,
just
so
teachers.
there's 550 total.
Correct.
And we're talking about our support staff and teachers.
Right.
Support staff, teachers, that's a lot of, that's a fourth of our staff.
And normally, we've had this all the way to 32
Right.
Okay,
in the past.
all right.
So,
All right, so I can make this change, then, and the same thing with the salary schedule, and I can show you what that looks like as well.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Next. So this is an incentive that when I got here last year, of course, I got here at the tail end of last year, and I went to a luncheon, very nice. Dora does a great job of, Dora, our Director of Food Services. So she does a great job of feeding us. I think I gained that part of that 12 pounds that I gained since I've been here. That and all the gray hair that Abel says. He came in and laughing at me the other day. But so in any event, but I asked, well, what's the incentive for our Teachers of the Year? And I said, how much? So no, I asked the question, how much do they get? And there was like, they get a plaque.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, there's no incentive. We don't have a Rookie of the Year program. We don't have. I said no. So basically, this will cost us $30,000. I think it's no money, right? But every elementary campus Teacher of the Year gets $1,000. Secondary campus gets $1,000. Now the district elementary Teacher of the Year gets $5,000, and same thing with the secondary. And then also, I wanted us to recognize our zero-year teachers. We have a seasoned workforce, and we're bringing in a lot of what I call a zero-year teachers. So, and they're learning. They're drinking from a fire hydrant. It's Weslaco ISD. It's welcome to the big leagues.
Right.
So again, so we want to be able to recognize our zero-year teachers, and by having them compete as the Rookie of the Year. And so we offer them a $1,000 stipend at the elementary and the secondary. So again, this is just a new kind of an incentive program for our teachers.
Outstanding.
And when I see Rookie of the Year for elementary and secondary, it says NA financially, but that's not to say that a principal or the staff can't celebrate a Rookie of the Year themselves on the campus, right? Not
correct.
financially, but just, any
Yeah.
little, okay.
Yeah, and I'm sure what's going to happen, and what I envision happening is each campus will nominate their Rookie of the Year, and then they'll all compete for the district Rookie of the Year. So,
Okay.
Very nice.
Okay.
good incentive.
all right. Next. This is the administrative assistant pay grade. Now, this one was really changed because we wanted to be able to recognize experience rather than the person that they serve. And as this was kind of brought up this was brought up during the board workshop that we had. It's like, well, how did this person go from this salary to this salary? And so there were a lot more questions that I really couldn't defend. So in this case, what we want to be able to do, and again, in rethinking, I know that every time I have a cabinet meeting or we have a huddle just about every morning, and they're probably, I know they're like, he changed his mind. He changed his mind. It's because I go to sleep or I try to sleep, but then my mind keeps on going, I'm like, I should have said this, or anyway, so, not that I second guess myself, it's just that I have a better idea on how to execute it. So, in any event, I go back and because we have a seasoned workforce, I thought that maybe we should align our administrative assistants based on that experience. So rather than, let's say you get picked at a level 4 and you're gonna serve an assistant superintendent, but you just started. So rather than having that high salary because of the level that they serve or the person that they serve, right? It's basically now years of experience versus a position. So again, this is scalable, right? And which is what I'm trying to create here, a scalable system. So our level 1 administrative assistants, 0 to 5, 6 to 10 is what we can, I'm not gonna read this to you, but again, this just allows us to adjust our salaries based on levels of experience because we wanna take care and honor and recognize their experience versus who's the luck of the draw, who gets to be, who gets to be the superintendent secretary, for example, it's just, clearly somebody with a lot of experience, but I just wanted to kind of change the pay scale and recognize the experience versus who they serve.
It's a great
So
move.
administrative assistants, like especially at the high school, you have several categories, including the secretary and the administrative assistant to the band, to the different, they will be categorized by years or by, because some responsibilities, being campus secretary, you have a lot of more responsibility than does, say, band director, administrative assistant.
So campus level administrative assistants fall in a different category because they're, and we didn't change this, but we recognize that as well.
Okay.
And that is something, just to speak, because, Dr. Coronado and I were having that conversation too, because the needs at the campus are so great and the responsibilities. And, you have maybe an administrative assistant who maybe at the district level is serving, maybe 2 or 3 people, and at the campus, I mean, they've got, at the high school, they could have, over 100 teachers and plus all the other staff. So recognizing that there's a difference between the workload.
Yeah, they never stop. I mean, they never even, they're just consistently busy.
And again, but we want to also be able to create a trajectory or promotional opportunity. So let's say, that's why we have office clerks. Office clerks soon, they can track into either a campus secretary or to an administrative assistant. Right. And again, I just want to make sure that we kind of, I guess trying to be politically correct too, that no more secretaries. We basically, it was a title change to administrative assistant. That's kind of how that works.
So this applies to all assistants except for campus level.
And that's correct, because because we didn't change their pay grade. Their pay grades remained the same as it was in previous years.
Okay.
However, I know that we had talked about reviewing those too, because there were some changes recommended by TASB that sort of generalized them.
Yes,
And,
I was about to
going
say.
back and looking at them, do they have the same? So in the phases that Dr. Coronado's been talking about, it's been, let's tackle this one first, and then we're gonna move to that one next. So I just want to assure the board and also those, that are at home watching too, that we are tackling that one too. It's just, these things come in phases.
That gave me I don't want to say red flag, but I did see on the TASB study that the administrative assistants were all in the 300s. It was like 304, I think. And it went by step every year. And this, in our compensation, we're going to have it in the 600s. And 600 didn't even exist in the TASB study. So I said, okay, we're doing this on our own. This is not by TASB. This is
Well,
something that-
I did call, I
Okay.
consulted with Aaron, I don't want to presume to know, how to properly structure, and, you have to look at the 80-20 when you're looking at a spread, and so I did reach out to her and say, hey, can you help me with this, review this with me?
Okay.
So yes, we did get that feedback from
Okay,
TASB,
so
that
that's
was really
okay,
important.
that we're making up the 600 pay, guys, we only go up to 400s, and after that, it stops.
We're at 500, yeah,
500?
500.
Okay, I knew something like that, but I didn't see 600. And I did see here that it says this salary schedule applies to the 22-23 school year only.
Mm-hmm.
Future salaries cannot be predicted from this schedule.
So
Standard
every
language.
series says that same thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
And that's
okay.
just because you should be reviewing them every year. So
Okay.
you should be looking at your skills every year, you should be
Right.
doing market equity studies, so that's just a standard language. Because, what happens, and especially now that it's new, is people will look at it and then they'll say, oh, so the next year, this is where I should be. But it could change, because ideally, you know, you want your scales to move up. Like Dr. Coronado was saying earlier, you know, you should base your scales on the market and on inflation and, you know, all of the other things that you have to consider when you're thinking about cost of living.
Yeah.
So,
And let me tell you something. I have had some teachers tell me, "Well, I just want to be a secretary. Why am I?" Because you know the rates are really good. Is this scalable to the rest of the staff?
so
Or comparable?
Yeah, that was one of the things that, you know, I discussed with Erin when I reached out to her about this, is wanted to make sure that when we are looking at the scales, that it is something, again, we don't want what happened with substitutes and instructional assistants to happen in this case too. So,
And also, I want to reiterate this, and Mr. Trevino, you kind of brought this to light many months ago. The past practice, and again, this was before probably anybody in this room was here, okay, well, we're going to start you at this salary. That's what happened. There was no computation. There was no, that was a practice, right? I applied, right? I'm going to apply for this job. Let's negotiate your salary. Well, we're trying to avoid that from happening, you know? So these are the salary schedules. This is a trajectory.
It's fair it's fair and set.
And that's what it is, right?
Will this also help as far as, you know, I remember talking about it several months ago, about our campus secretaries versus our central office secretaries.
so there is
You
a
know.
marked difference there. And it also allows, it doesn't only delineate the difference, but it also allows our secretaries who have been here for a very long time to go into a scale that rewards them for their time, because they've been here perhaps 30 years or 40 years. So it's not just about showing that differentiation, right, between what we have at a campus and the responsibilities there and what we have here, but also being able to provide that growth for those that have been loyal to our district and have been here for a very long time.
But is it something now where it's more comparable now, as far as, you know, there was a big significant difference where
Yes.
our campus secretaries were
Yeah.
at
Yes.
minimum to mid or whatever, and our secretaries up here, I don't want to say with less workload, because it's all work, I mean, it's just.
Work is work,
different,
right? Yeah.
Yes. So are we something now that it's something more comparable now?
It's, if I may, it's a start. Starting here, but like I had mentioned earlier, we still have to go back and look at the campus, because with these, it still allows for that campus level to be at the right spot, right? Because you're looking at different pay grades, and if you see, you should have the addendums to the compensation plan with the actual language there and the rates there. If you look at that, you'll see that with your campus secretaries, their pay range is actually about in the middle. It's somewhere around between 2 and 3, or perhaps it's 3 and 4. I'd have to go back and look at it. But it's comparable, right? So then you still have, and the caveat there is, if you have someone with 0 years of experience as a campus secretary, they're still going to be making more than someone with 0 years of experience at the district level.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
And that's what I'm glad you pointed that out, because you've said it yourself that the work and you know, the glory is at the campus level. That's where you're needed, and that's where the work is at, the bulk of it.
Yes.
So I'm glad that the scales are comparable. That's why, because they were kind of lopsided before.
But I do want to say that we're not done, because
Right,
we
yeah, you're
still
still
have
working.
to evaluate
We-
those campus.
Thank you, you beat me to I'm dealing with a GT group here today. It's like, you guys read this before I even got it going. But, so, again, the only things that we looked at for this particular meeting, right, were teachers, librarians, nurses, longevity stipend, administrative assistants, and then the teacher
Instructional
incentives.
coaches.
Instructional coaches, right? We're not done, okay? We're not done, and hopefully I can bring back here on the September 20th board meeting, right, you know, another potential change, but I need to, this, right here, this is all being what's recommended, but we still have, this took a lot of time and a lot of work to do the math. We still have to fix or correct or find, right, anything that was done for our other pay grades. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is a process.
So tonight, when we vote on this, it's gonna be just on what you presented. It
That's-
won't
just
be-
the one
That's, sir.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
That-
And
that
then
was
it phases
one of
the
my
rest, it
concerns.
phases.
Right, just what you have in your packets, the pages that you have.
And just to reiterate and bring up again, this is a starting point. We're gonna make sure that we look at every employee.
Yes.
Regardless of where they're working at, so that they get what's fair for them too.
Every position, so.
Every position, every employee. I have a stack of emails. Can you please look at my salary? I've been here, can you please? Yes. So to all, I'm sorry that I didn't reply to all of you, but I have your emails. I have a stack of emails that, yes, we are looking at every individual employee in the district.
Great, outstanding.
Okay?
That's fair.
And like I said before, you guys can do that on your own. We don't have to wait for you to work on everyone. And what I would like to do is just set, past this slide, the administrative assistants are the next, I don't know if I'll wait for you to get to that slide. If we can just set the min, mid, max, just the way TASB did it, you guys can work on the salaries individually. Can we not do that tonight?
That's the way that they're set.
Yeah,
So,
to include the other pay grades at TASB, 'cause
Well, I'm not prepared to, because I need to look at those first, at the same depth that I looked at these particular salaries. So I'm sorry, but I'm not prepared to
Okay.
look at that yet.
okay, because literally I just saw from the TASB study that Weslaco, it's the same exact min, mid, max that we have here proposed. It's just a copy, right?
So are you asking that we just add the annualized salary, or did you
Right.
want us to change? I'm not sure what you're asking.
No, I'm not asking you to change people's salaries right now, tonight. What I'm saying is, from the TASB study that we got, that has the min, mid, max that you used for the next slide, I think of clerical, and I'm not sure who's next. Let me look here.
it's their corrections on there.
Okay, the corrections are exactly what TASB told us should be the min, mid, max.
So then you're talking about the annual
Annual
salary? Yes.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, yes, the annual salary. You already have that done. It's exactly what's on TASB's
Yeah, so I
study.
think that's not so much anything, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not so much anything you have to approve because it's exactly what's on there. It's just.
You've already
in
approved
a-
it.
Right, in another format. So it's just a matter of editing the
Oh, okay,
document, and
so
we can edit the
We
document.
already approved these corrections.
So what and again, correct me if I'm wrong, you're talking about the mid and the minimum, the midpoint, and the maximum hourly rate. You would like to add the annual rate.
Yes.
Yes, and since the hourly rate is equal to what
The
the,
days.
the annual rate is in days and hours, then yes, we can do that. I don't think that requires approval from the
Right,
board, so
and
we
I'm-
just have to edit it.
Okay, so I'm
Yeah,
not
just do
saying
the
just
math.
for these, but
Right,
like
just
the
the math.
100s, everybody.
Yes.
Everybody's already there.
Yes.
Because it didn't
I-
match up with what
I will
information
ask
we
to
had.
give me just a little time to
Okay.
go in and do it, but yes, we can
No,
absolutely
that's
do
perfect.
that.
That's what I want you to know.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we don't have to approve that. It's already there. Okay.
Next. So here's the bad news. So the hit for us to correct, correct is a bad word. I'm just, let me say that, right? To better align our salary schedule to our teacher, librarian, and nurse salary schedule is about $1.4 million. Our instructional coaches, again, we have about 36 of them. That's going to cost us about $200,000. The administrative assistant pay grade schedule, I gave you a copy of the ones that we did with those adjustments, that'll save us about $100,000. And then the longevity stipend, we've allocated about $400,000. But again, that will actually decrease if we change the teacher scale to 32 years. Okay, just understand that. And then, of course, the teacher, the Rookie of the Year stipend is about $30,000. Now, the question's gonna be, all right, Dino, well, where are we gonna come up with $1.99 million? And this is where we rack my head, it's like, okay. So we have money encumbered with our teacher vacancies that we haven't filled. We know we're overstaffed, right? My thought is Andres, you're gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong here, or is that we can do this a lot. Now, remember, I'm gonna say this. The salaries that I'm proposing right now are sustainable, right? In other words, it's not gonna hurt us because we can sustain it. What we can't take the hit out of the general fund really is the $1.9 million, nearly $2 million. So my thought is that we have a pretty healthy fund balance. We can use it for a one-time shot to infuse some of these corrections. And again, I keep saying corrections. It's not a correction, right? I call it an equity adjustment is how I think I phrased it. It's an equity adjustment because we want to be able to value teachers' experience. So to pay for the equity adjustment, right, my suggestion or recommendation would be, and I don't know if it needs to be a board agenda item to pay for this, but we can pull it out of our fund balance, just get it over with, right? And then, because we can sustain the rest of it with their normal salaries.
Yeah, board.
Okay,
Yeah, taking it from fund balance will need to be a budget amendment.
that's what I thought. Yeah, okay?
But if, and, you know, we're going in the right direction, right? If we get another additional 1,200 students.
Right.
Yes.
How much will that bring also to the table?
$1.2 million.
Right.
Well,
And-
no, $120 million.
Right.
And then
No.
the ADA also too.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're, I challenged the staff, and as you
Right.
may know, I email the entire staff at least once a week or every other week.
Right.
Right? And I challenged them to bring in 1,000 kids.
Correct.
They're scaring me.
Right.
Right?
That's
And I'm
good.
like, because now I got to pay for it, right?
Right.
But again, it's a good problem to have.
Right.
And we're almost there. We're almost there. So I think the challenge was, I'm very happy that we're going to meet that challenge. So that's why I say that with that in mind, we can sustain it, but we really need to have the equity adjustment infused into this because of, and you'll see in the next slide. Can you go to the next slide, please? This is the phase. This is the adjustment timeline that I'm recommending. So our payroll department is actually doing payroll as we speak. Right? It has to drop in order for it to, because Monday's a federal holiday, the money has to drop on the 1st and the 2nd of September. Which is tomorrow, right? So we didn't want to get ahead of the game, right? Because we needed board approval to move forward with the equity adjustment. And so, the plan is that we go ahead and if I'll recommend these changes, but then we retro the check to October 7th, and this is when we're gonna need the $2 million. And I guess we can add that item to the September 20th board agenda, so that way we can make the payroll on October 7th, right? And then now everybody's caught up. So what they'll see is, pending board approval, is they'll see their regular increase, right, which they saw in September, plus they'll get a retro check. It'll be a different line number, right? But they'll see that as part of their paycheck. So October will be a very good month for them, for the teachers, librarians, nurses, right, and instructional coaches, okay? Now, the longevity stipend, that's gonna take a little bit more time because there's 186 folks, or actually there's 500 and some folks total, right? If we do the 25, if we go to the 32 years, for teachers, I think we only have 56 teachers, but then we still have 400 and some of our support staff. So I'm asking that phase 2 of the retro check for longevity stipend is for the November 10th paycheck, right? And then we still need to be able to, and this is a correction, correct the years of service, and this is gonna take some time because again, the teacher that got here in 1995, but his pay is in 2012, that's going to take a little bit of time and probably some external help. So that's kind of phase 3 for just these pieces here. So that's my recommended or proposed timeline that I'm asking the board to give me a little bit of leniency and time. Now, we still have to go back and reevaluate all of the other pay scales, right? And I wish I can give you a timeline on that one, but I guess I kind of need to, I really want to get this one done first, right? And then, so what I can do is give you an update at the September 20th regular board meeting, if I can get that permission, okay? Next. Can you go to the third slide, please? So this is something that we came up with pending your approval. It hasn't been posted yet. So really, this is kind of what we just kind of done, right? A property tax relief. Well, a lot of people don't realize that we actually, I mean you, because I can't do that, but you actually decreased the property tax rate to, just over 2 cents, which is huge for some. Now, pending your approval tonight, the equity, we call it an equity salary adjustments for teachers, nurses, librarians, and our instructional coaches, right? You've already approved the retention and recruitment stipends. Pending your approval tonight, the longevity stipends, anywhere from $600 to $1,350, right? The campus teacher of the year, the district teacher of the year, and the district rookie of the year. So again, pending your approval, we would actually release this and let people know that Weslaco ISD still is the right choice. And what I call, and I know I get in trouble for saying this, but we're the only choice, right? Carlos is like, that's not our logo. I'm like, okay, so, but I insist that we are the only choice.
Great
Dr.
job,
Coronado,
Doc.
go ahead. So sorry. Go ahead,
Great
go ahead.
job, I know with inflation at an all-time high, just looking at all these points here and helping our staff, I know it's gonna go a long ways, and thank you for all this work that you and your team, everybody, thank you so much.
For the non-believers, and I'm just saying, the property tax is decreasing, but we're increasing salary and incentives. How is that? Where are we getting the money from?
Our enrollment is increasing.
Enrollment increases.
So when people ask, it's our staff bringing in those
Our
kids.
staff it's those group of second grade teachers who said, I don't want to leave my campus and let's go out there and get the kids.
Mr.
And-
Sanchez said he wasn't gonna raise taxes for 2 years, so that's a good thing. He's already on the hook. So.
So it's ADA that's helping us out. We're
enrollment?
decreasing the money coming in, but we're increasing the money going out.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're able to sustain that in the coming years.
That's correct. And I think that by paying our staff, getting them motivated, as we come up here once a month or twice a month sometimes, our focus really is and must be on student outcomes. Right? And as educational leaders, we have to lead, we impact student outcomes through the adults that we have in our system.
Right.
And so we have to be able to take care of the adults in our system, right? And so that we can improve student outcomes. So those are the conversations, that I like to have as a team of 8. And again, it's okay that we have our differences. It's those healthy conversations. There's a saying that if we all think the same way, then nobody's thinking.
Right.
So it's okay to have those healthy conversations, and it's about understanding. Mr. Staita, to your point, clarity and communication. Oftentimes, we fail. I fail in terms of that clarity, because what happens is that if our communication is not clear and it comes out, there's a level of ambiguity. People fill in the blanks with what they think. And when I went around campuses, I never want an employee to say, I heard. I'm like, so in other words, it's probably not true, right? So as soon as an employee says, I heard, well, tell me. So I always tell the staff, you want to really know, you see me, they see me at Whataburger because they say, if you eat regular food, yeah, I eat a lot of it. But, and so just ask me, right? If they say they heard, I heard, if the conversation starts with I heard, ask me. And then they can hear it from me. And so there's a lot going on. I know we have 2,300 employees. I was very fortunate and have been very fortunate and blessed to have met all 2,300 employees. I went to every campus. We held back-to-school luncheons for our entire support staff. And maybe some were absent, so maybe I didn't get to meet them. But in terms of visiting every department in one group, was at a luncheon with cafeteria workers and our security guards, and I had a cafeteria worker come up to me and tell me, I've been here for 28 years, and we have never been in one room together. They even took a group photo. You know?
It's amazing.
I mean, 28 years. So I want to believe that we're doing the right things. I also want to say that sometimes the decisions that we make aren't popular. But you didn't hire me to become popular, right? You hired me to make some really hard decisions, right? And every day it's something new. Every day it's something new, right? We have a saying now, and I'm gonna spill the beans, right? You've seen the infomercials, but wait, there's more, right? And that's the kind of the running theme for us, right? You know, it's, but wait, there's more. And I was like, do you guys ever bring me good news? You know, and so I will put the team, the district leadership team, up against any team in the state or the country. I'm honored to work for them. I'm honored to work for our campus principals. They're doing some heavy lifting. I know that I am asking for a lot in a very short amount of time, because my focus really wants to be on reading. I want all of our kids to read, and that's kind of my goal. And but we got to get this fixed first.
I think when we look at the last meeting we had when we did the $5,000 retention stipend, and we looked at the staff and we looked at the scores and everything that they accomplished, you know, coming back, just being back on campus, getting out of that virtual environment, and look at all the progress they made, because really they were given about 3 years to kind of close that gap, and they did a huge leap in just one. And so, I mean, I'm just excited for this new school year. I think they're going to do an outstanding job, and it's good that we're investing more in our staff, and all of our staff at all levels. Because you drive around the community and you see our schools from outside in, you know, you can see just the level of work. I mean, our campuses, or the landscaping, just everything, the condition that they're in, our transportation. So staff is doing a great job. You all are doing a great job as well, too. We've made some huge leaps in academics, and we're just excited for 22-23. So thank you.
And you know, Mark, you and I had a discussion, you know, because you physically were not at the convocation, but you took the time to see what was there.
Right.
And I didn't have to prepare anything, just to get the motivation from the energy that all our campuses brought to that building that day. It was a heck of a deal. And that's when I looked over at Dr. Coronado and says, no, not really. But he gave it a very strong thought, and he went back and crunched the numbers, and everybody got what they deserved. And if it could be more, we would.
Right.
But I can't be more thankful for the job that everyone is doing, because you're putting your staff, you're putting our students, this community, the school district before you, and I don't think that we can ask for more. Just keep doing what you're doing. Let's keep moving forward and get stronger together to get this thing done. So well done. Thank you.
Dr. Coronado, I'll motion to approve the updates on the 2022-23 compensation plan.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Nieto has made a motion to approve the
Updates?
update to the compensation plan,
And the second.
and a second by Mr. Los Santos.
Yes.
We have had a good lengthy discussion. Let's put it to a vote.
Can I just say something really
Yes, ma'am, if you're
Just
ready.
want to reiterate, because any questions or anything, any doubts anybody has, and I just Googled this right now, it all comes down to communication and clarity with our administration. And the quote is, effective teamwork begins and ends with communication. And so I really appreciate that our administration and our staff opens the door to the staff, to everybody. And if there's any doubts or any questions, thank you for communicating with them. And if there's any problems from here forward, you know, communication is key. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mrs.
Are we,
Vega.
are we gonna be later on amending the 30, or looking at the 32-plus years?
So what I can do is do the 25 so that they can get started, and then and then in September 20th, I'll have the ones for the 32.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Okay. Let's take it to a vote. Mr. Nieto.
Aye.
Mr. Staita.
Aye.
Costa Trevino.
Aye.
Dr. Rodriguez.
Aye.
Mr. Los Santos.
Aye.
And the chair, I vote yes. Motion carries. Now we go to item 5.
Just, if I may, I just wanted to add to it, and I just wanted, because I know you asked, how are we gonna pay for this? I do want to thank, and as reiterate what Dr. Coronado said, you know, it starts on our campuses with our teachers, principals, administrators, everything that's going on, all our data entries, you know, attendance clerks and so forth. We've been working very hard with our PIMS department as well, because we want to make sure that we reconcile every day our student counts, our absences, our enrolled students, that they're showing up, and they are doing a wonderful job with that.
Awesome.
So, you know, that's what keeps us going. So, you know, it'd be remiss of me if I didn't recognize them, because they are working very hard, because we're all moving in the same direction on what we want to do. So thank you. Just wanted to thank you for bringing that up.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, all the staff. Great job.
Very good. We will now go into closed meeting to discuss A, personnel matters, Texas Government Code 551.074. 1, discussion regarding superintendent's recommendation on certified professional personnel. 2, discussion regarding superintendent's recommendation on resignations and retirements of certified professional personnel. 3, deliberation regarding the appointment, employment evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, Texas Government Code 551.074 and 551.071. B, consultation with attorney regarding A, pending or contemplated litigation, B, a settlement offer, or C, a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the Weslaco ISD under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code 551.071. The time now is 7:57, and we will go into closed session. The time now is 9:12, and we have reconvened in open meeting. A, possible action if necessary on items discussed in closed meeting. 1, discussion and possible action regarding superintendent's recommendation on employment of certified professional personnel. Dr. Coronel?
Board President, members of the board, I forgot to mention something regarding strategy, and something I shared with the team is that our strategy at this point needs to be one of courage. And so I think we're doing that, and I want to thank you for your support. Regarding personnel matters, I'd like to recommend the certified professional personnel as discussed in closed session.
Move to approve?
We have a motion by Dr.
Second.
Rodriguez and a second by Mr. De Los Santos. Let's take this to a vote. Mr. Nieto.
Aye.
Mrs. Susaita.
Aye.
Costeño.
Aye.
Dr. Rodriguez.
Aye.
Mr. De Los Santos.
Aye.
Motion carries. 2, discussion and possible action regarding superintendent's recommendation on resignations and retirements of certified professional personnel. Dr. Coronel.
Board President and members of the board, I'd like to recommend resignations and retirements of certified professional personnel as discussed in closed session.
Move to approve?
We have a motion by Dr. Rodriguez
Second.
and a second by Mr. De Los Santos. Let's take it to a vote. Mr. Nieto.
Aye.
Mrs. Susaita.
Aye.
Costeño.
Aye.
Dr. Rodriguez.
Aye.
Mr. De Los Santos.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 7, adjournment.
So move.
We have a motion. The time now is
Andrews. That was Andrews.
9:14, and we are adjourned.